Hey y'all, and welcome to the kitchen. Today we're doing a Florentine style pasta dish that's ready in the time it takes for you to cook some pasta, and it has 10 ingredients or less. There's a few you could leave out, that's optional. But we're gonna start with one of my favorite ingredients, and that is bacon. We're gonna get a few slices of this bacon into my pan so it can be the base for our flavors that we build on the entire time we're building this dish. In my back pot, I already have some pasta water coming up to a boil. It'll be boiling in just a minute, and this entire dish is going to be ready by the time our pasta is cooked. So let's get started. So first things first, a lot of times you see people putting pancetta and prosciutto and things like that in Italian dishes, but I like to keep these really accessible for you guys. So I'm using bacon as my savory meat here choice today, and we're going to use some scissors just to kind of get this in the pan. Here's a tip. I'm going to cut these strips of bacon into my pan, but my pan is not on yet. We're going to turn my pan on once the bacon is in the pan, because if you turn it on and the bacon's landing in a very hot pan, it's not going to crisp up evenly the way that it would if the pan is cold. So the easiest way is chopping your bacon with a pair of scissors. It's not glamorous, but it works. Really try to keep your slices a little bit thinner, on the thinner side. The smaller the better. Easy in your mouth to be bite size. Another way that you can get this bacon really nice and small is put it in the freezer for a few minutes, and then that way you have a little bit more of a firm meat to cut through with your knife, and it will actually be easier to cut if it's slightly frozen. I know a lot of chefs that actually keep their bacon in the freezer all the time, and they just pull it out as they need it and they slice it, because really after about 10 minutes on the counter, it's easy to get separated and sliced, and that cold bacon just makes the difference. But I find I don't always think ahead that way, and scissors do the trick for me. So scissors it is. I've got about 4 or 5 slices of thick cut bacon here. You want to have a probably good about ½ pound of bacon in your pan. All said and done, it'll be about a cup of bacon in here. And we're just getting it in little small lardons is what this is called, little small strips. We're not having to be too particular about it. This is going to render out. We are going to keep the bacon fat in the bottom of our pan, and then we're going to remove the bacon on a paper towel, and it's going to be put back into our dish at the very end. So now I'm going to wash up real quick, and I'm going to turn my heat on, and then we're going to get the rest of this dish started. Now, we've talked a lot about, in the shortcut supper arena, the things that you can find in your freezer section. And a lot of times I go ahead and say, well, you can find those in your freezer section, but I'm going to chop them for you real quick. But we're legitimately going out of the freezer section today. So I'm going to get some heat under this pan and show you the rest of my ingredients. So we're going to start with our bacon coming up and our pasta here. So our pasta for today is some spaghetti. You can use fettuccine. Any long pasta works perfect for this. Short pasta also works perfect for this, but I just find that when you have a sauce that's creamy with smaller things like this, I love to have the long noodles to soak up that creamy sauce and get really decadent down in there. It kind of reminds me a little bit of a carbonara, which you almost always see with a spaghetti. So that's what we're using today. And if you notice, I said spaghetti that time. My Italian sister-in-law is teaching me how to say some things very correctly. Spaghetti is a lot closer than spaghetti to what it actually sounds like. So we've got some spaghetti, and we're going to drop that in a second. I've also got some chopped onions from my freezer section. I've told you about this superhero in the grocery store before. This saves you tears and time, and it is super affordable. So always pick up some chopped onions. Whether you're a professional chopper or not, this is going to come in handy for a time saver. Then I've also got some frozen spinach. And here's my spiel about frozen spinach. Spinach is one of those things that if you buy it fresh, you are going to get a lot less at the end if you're cooking it than what you actually think that you're going to get. So when you buy spinach like this, you know this is how much you're getting for your dish. This isn't going to shrink down incredibly like fresh spinach would. So if you're buying fresh spinach for this, it goes really fast, but it's going to start like a heat and cook down and end up being this much spinach. So if you want to save yourself some time, I always love to have chopped frozen spinach in my freezer. And I also like to put it out just a few minutes before I'm ready to use it so it breaks up and gets a little more integrated into my dish faster. I can hear my bacon starting to sizzle, so I'm going to grab a wooden spoon and I'm just going to kind of spread it out around my pan. And then my water is about to a full boil here. So I'm watching that really closely. It's getting close to boiling. Anytime that you're boiling water for pasta or whatever, anytime you're cooking anything that doesn't have a lot of starch in it, you can cover your pot and it's going to boil faster than it would if you left it to boil on its own. But we're almost where we need to be on the boil there. A couple of other ingredients that I have for my dish. I have cream cheese, which this is a wonderful heavy hitter in the creaminess department as well as the flavor department. Some chicken stock to thin out my sauce. Some garlic, because what do I ever make without onions and garlic, really? Let's be honest. And then I've got some oregano. You can also use Italian seasoning and some Parmesan cheese. Now, I never count my two always ingredients, and that's salt and pepper. But you should know we're going to use salt and pepper in anything that we've got going on. So those are my ingredients. My 10th is I've got parsley for garnish. Totally optional. I just love the way it looks on the plate, but you can do whatever you'd like to do. You don't have to have that. Okay, so my bacon is going. I'm going to get a little bit of salt into my water back here for my pasta. And by a little bit, I mean we want it to taste like the ocean. So for a pound of pasta in a big pot of water like this, I'm going to use at least a tablespoon of salt. And you can always test it to make sure it tastes like the ocean before you add your pasta, because this is your primary opportunity to season the pasta itself. So I really like to season my water aggressively with salt so we don't end up with pasta that tastes like nothing, and we're trying to help it out at the finish line. Building flavors is so important, because if you get to the end and it doesn't taste like anything, it's really hard to get those seasonings to do what you're wanting them to do for you at the end. But if you build it a little at a time, you're going to find that what you get at the end will need almost no seasoning at all, or just a little bit, and you'll be a lot happier with your results. Okay, so while my bacon is starting to render, I'm going to get a plate and get it ready to get the bacon off when it's done, so we can continue to build the rest of our flavors in our pan. I'm just going to put a little paper towel on there to drain off extra fat. Not necessary, but we'll just do it. It actually does, if you drain the fat away, it does help in the crisping. The bacon will stay crispier longer. Okay, so my heat on my bacon is about a medium heat now. I got it hot quickly on a high, but once it came up to temp, I turned it down to medium so it's not going nuts. And we're going to get our pasta in. Now, spaghetti is one of those things that cooks in about a 10 to 12 minute cook time. The rule of thumb in the Italian community is something called al dente, which means to the tooth. You don't want to cook it until it's gooey and mushy. You want it to have its integrity still left to it. So we're going to drain this just shy of completely done, and then it's going to finish in the pasta sauce. So everybody deep in there. I'm going to let it get kind of started getting tender on that one end, and then I'll use my tongs to help it get into the water. My bacon is smelling amazing. So I'm going to go ahead and move it around a few more minutes. And the crisping is already starting. It's nice and brown. Yum. I definitely could stand to make extra bacon when I'm cooking bacon for a dish like this, when it's not the point to like just be eating bacon. I should know better. I should just go ahead and make double the amount of bacon so I can snack on the bacon. But, you know, I can do that later when the cameras are not rolling. This is looking absolutely delicious. And because we have so much yummy, good bacon fat in the bottom of this pan, we're not going to need to add any oil, or any olive oil or avocado oil like I love to use in this dish at all. The bacon's actually going to be our flavor punch and our fat in this dish. Okay, so my noodles are all in. You'll notice I will stir those a few more times throughout the process. You want to make sure they're not clumping at all during this, and you always want to make sure your boil is sort of maintained its speed. You don't want it to slow down the boil. You want it to kind of keep rolling at a good simmer at least. That way you'll ensure that you don't get pasta that's stuck together. Okay, so my bacon is looking amazing. I'm going to get a slotted spoon or a spatula or something. Get all this out into my pan, and then we're going to add in our onions and our spinach. That happened in no time. Even on a cold pan, you see, that bacon came up in no time. Now, my heat is really high on my pasta, and we don't want to spill out too much water. So I'm going to turn it down now that it is a good rolling boil and get the rest of my bacon out of my pan. You got a couple of little pieces in there. That's not a huge deal. Obviously, this is going back in there anyway. Now, first thing's going to go in now is my onions. I'm going to get all of these onions in here. Sometimes I use half of this pack. Sometimes I use all of it. Today, I really want to build the onion flavor. So this is the equivalent of one big chopped onion, which is about 2 cups of onions. And I'm getting it all into the pan, into my bacon grease, which that makes me so happy. The smell of onions and bacon grease. I could call it a day right there. Put the pasta in that. No problem. Smells like a cross between dinner and breakfast at this point. Okay, I'm going to get that moving around. Get some good color on my onions started. Got one little bacon that got away. Let's get him out of there. We want to save you for later. The bacon's getting away. It's not getting away on the stove. It's going to get away into my mouth. Okay, now that the onions are in, I can turn my heat back up to medium-high. I'm going to stir my pasta again real quick. Make sure she's on about medium heat as well. Doing her thing. All right. Now we're going to get our spinach in and our garlic and some more of our seasonings. So let's start with the garlic and then we'll get spinach last. My garlic really could stand to go in right with these onions because it kind of builds the flavor base and it lets it start to get tender before you add too much moisture into the pan. And we don't want to bite down on a big piece of raw garlic. So because this is so fast and because this is a really not pungent garlic dish, we want to go ahead and get that in at this point. So about a teaspoon of salt here. I'm not going to go crazy with the salt because we are going to have salt later in our chicken stock that that thins out the sauce. But we're also having salt from our bacon. So we want to know, obviously, that we already have a fairly savory flavor in there. So my salt went in. I'm going to put about a tablespoon of oregano. And for this, I always use my hands to wake up these dry spices. And I use the heat to wake up these dry spices. Anytime that you have spices that have been in a jar for a long time, they're not going to pack their flavor punch that they could if you wake them up. So when you get them in early like this, you can use a lot less and really taste them later in the dish because they've had an opportunity to get really right on that heat at the beginning of the process. The heat is not only built to cook, but it's also built to make your flavor have the most impact. So there we go with that. So I did salt. We did oregano, or you can use Italian seasoning. I'm going to go with about a teaspoon of pepper. And you could also use red pepper flakes in here for that. My husband really loves a little kick and stuff. I like it too sometimes, but we have little, so black pepper is what I normally use. But a few little red pepper flakes wouldn't put it over the spicy edge for little ones. It would be just fine. It just would possibly make me have a little bit of in the kitchen. I'm learning that. I get really excited about something spicy and I get my face too close to it and I'm like, whoa, cut. I'm going to have to get my composure and myself back together. That's happened in live classes a few times. Okay, so now my spinach is going to go in. This spinach is probably, you would not believe it. If you know those big bags of spinach that you get in your produce aisle that look like a ton of spinach, it really does shrink down to this much. I promise. It's crazy how much spinach shrinks down. But it's water content. So when you get it like this, the water has already come out of it. And you don't have to take that extra time to chop that down just to get your spinach into the dish. This is actually what you'll end up with anyway. So, okay, let's get my spinach working. We do have medium-high heat, like I said, because these are frozen and we want to get them going pretty quick. So I'm going to get my spinach working around. We'll let him hang out on the heat for a few minutes before I mess with him anymore. Okay, now the next thing I need to do is stir my pasta another little bit, and then we're going to get into opening our cream cheese. Now, Florentine, the word Florentine, when explaining a dish, really just means that it has spinach in it and it is creamy, and usually it has some Parmesan cheese. So we are using Parmesan cheese at the end. That's going to be our flavoring cheese per se, but our creamy cheese here is going to be cream cheese. So I love cream cheese in pasta dishes like this because it just adds a richness that you can get from almost nothing else. There's a couple of other things in the grocery store that work. There's something called Neuchâtel cheese that works, or you could also use some creme fraiche. But right here, this cream cheese for me is the winner every single time. So I'm going to just open my package, and it starts to melt in your pan, almost like butter, but like a really, really creamy version of butter. And obviously it doesn't get as liquidy. So that's why you have to add a chicken stock or some water and some seasonings to thin it out, just so you're not like heavy in the creamy department, but not completely coating your dish. You want it to have enough liquid to come to the point where it's going to coat your pasta well. You'll actually see at the end, when my pasta is done, we are going to finish this with a little bit of my pasta cooking water. And what that does, it allows your pasta to actually stick like glue to your sauce. So that pasta water is a magic ingredient that we didn't even have to count because we didn't really work for that. Get a little bit more out of here. So I went in with my block of cream cheese. I'm going to turn it down to about medium heat. And then I'm going to start getting in about a cup of chicken stock. Wipe my hands off real quick. I got some slippery fingers at this point from that cheese. Okay. And my chicken stock is just going to add a savory flavor and help me thin out my sauce. If you wanted to add water here, you totally could, but I would just recommend adding a teaspoon or so of chicken base or vegetable base to that as well. So I'm going to go in with a cup of stock. And I like to eyeball it, but I know there are 4 cups in this container. So that's how I know exactly-ish how to do it without putting it into a measuring cup. And then I'm going to stir this all together. And I'm just going to start moving my cream cheese around and getting everybody coated in my sauce. As the cream cheese starts to melt, you want to turn your heat back to about a medium low and just start stirring everything together. Like I said, this is so fast. Like, we are getting closer than you would realize to the finish line already. Delicious. You want to get a tiny bit of browning on your onions. Not a ton, just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit, because that browning gives a really long cook flavor to something that is a shortcut process. So whenever you have a shortcut, you don't want it to taste like a shortcut. You want it to taste like you've been doing it for a while, because there is just depth of flavor in something going for a really long time. Something I teach people in Mama Witten's kitchen a lot is there are certain things that are better if you just make it the day before, like my beef stew and my spaghetti sauce. If I have time, I'm going to make that the day before every single time. But when you don't have time to do that, taking the steps like doing a good browning part of the process, having your chicken base or your beef base on hand whenever you're adding extra flavor, those things make things that go fast taste like they've gone low and slow. Same thing with our already prepared chicken stock. That has cooked for a really long time. Even when I make mine at home, those things have cooked for hours and hours. Typically, I store them and I freeze them in jars, or either I make it and I use it all week long in our dishes. But it's something that has happened low and slow. I'm going to add about another half cup real quick of this and let this start to simmer for a few minutes. And then I'm going to check my pasta to see how done it is. But like I said, before we dump that pasta out, I'm going to take a cup and I'm going to take a cup of that pasta water off, because it's going to go in and it's really going to be an important part of this dish coming together. All right. My cream cheese is almost completely melted and it smells literally like heaven in here. I mean, I don't quite know what heaven smells like, but I've got my guesses. Maybe it's different for each person. The Lord knows us well. Okay, so I'm going to check my pasta. And it looks good. There is a practice in some Italian kitchens that I've heard about before where you can kind of throw a noodle at the wall, and if it sticks, it's done. But we'll let you try that at home. I won't be a bad example if that's considered a bad example. Okay, I'm testing my noodles now. Perfectly al dente. So I'm going to get a cup, get some of my liquid off, and then we're going to drain our pasta. Just a little bit's all you need. Just taking it just a little bit off the top. And we may not need to even use everything that I drained out, but I've got it if I need it. So I'm going to turn my heat off, get my strainer over here. I'll get my parsley in just a minute. Like I said, that parsley is optional, but it's so pretty. And honestly, we're already here in late October. This bacon is red and that parsley is green, and I'm a Christmas girl. So anytime I get to make something look a little Christmassy, girlfriend's gonna do it. Girlfriend's gonna do it in the Christmas department. So let me drain my pasta here. I love pasta. It's one of those things, like, I like to have it on hand. Like I've taught you before, I shortcut a lot of things by making pasta ahead of time and keeping it in the refrigerator. So we keep pasta on hand all the time. For this particular recipe, I wanted to show you about using that cooking water. So that's why I cooked it here today without doing it ahead of time. If you do decide to do that, you can go ahead and take out pasta water, put it in a jar, and put it in your fridge if you think you want to make that. Or you could also do a little bit more stock at the end and give the sauce a little bit more time to simmer together, and it would still work out for you. You would just want to cook your pasta a little less on the front end so it has more sauce time on the back end. Okay, so in my sauce goes all my pasta, and that is a very important lesson in an authentic Italian kitchen. I was raised, you put pasta on your plate, you put sauce on top of your pasta. But that is a big no-no in Italian cooking. You cook your pasta, you combine it with the sauce, you stir everybody together. Like I said, my sister-in-law is Italian. She lives in Long Island, New York, and her family has a couple of restaurants up there. Her sister owns one. Her family has owned one for years. And she really doesn't even cook as much as I do. But there are just a few things that my brother will say, Lauren, go let Alana tell you how to pronounce that. And then we'll work on how I'm saying it. And then there's a few things that I look at them and I'm just like, if I say it that way, then I definitely won't sound like me anymore. So I'm still going to say things like spaghetti most of the time. But while I have it on the brain, I'm going to try to do it the right way. Okay, so I've got all my pasta water in there. It looked like I need it. I'm going to get my spoon and I'm going to start stirring this together a little bit. The only reason I need my spoon right here instead of my tongs is I want to get everything off the bottom of the pan and make sure it's integrated into my sauce with my pasta. So the spoon's going to be the best to do that, and then we'll use our tongs to twirl this together later on. It's beautiful in this pan. Green, creamy, the smell of the garlic and the onions. It's heaven to me. I mean, I could just stand here with a fork at this point, but I guess that's probably not the right thing to do. A personal pan of pasta. I get a personal bowl of pasta. Okay, she's a beauty. Now, this is how we're going to finish her up. We put a little bit of black pepper on the top. I am going to taste for salt real quick. I almost got so excited about the pasta, I forgot to taste for salt. We shouldn't need much, if any, at this point because we salted our water, we had bacon, and we salted our veggies. That one's going to hang a little low. I could camp out right here all day long. No lie. All right, we're going to do a little tiny sprinkle of salt, maybe a half a teaspoon here. I'm going to put my bacon reserved right back on top. Good night. Then Parmesan cheese. And this is the grated Parmesan cheese. You can get the triangles, wedges in the grocery store if you'd like to. I always serve extra parm on the table anytime I'm cooking anything that has Parmesan cheese in it. Always, always serve parm on the table. Funny story, we actually, our boys have a young man that's one of their friends, and he is a big Parmesan cheese guy. And we were out to eat at an Italian restaurant one time. And you know how they have the Parmesan cheese shakers on the table? Well, it was a full Parmesan cheese shaker, and the boys are kind of on their end doing their thing, and the adults are on the other end doing their thing. And we look down there, and Thomas has used almost an entire shaker of Parmesan cheese on his meal. And he's like, "Do you think I could ask for more Parmesan cheese?" And we're like, "Buddy, I think we've got enough." But you know what? He probably ended up doing it. He's a big boy, big football player boy, so he can stand to have all the Parmesan cheese that he wants. I'm going to garnish with about 2 tablespoons of parsley. Like I said, that is totally optional. But when I can, I like to make something look as much like Christmas as possible. So that's what we're doing today. Sprinkle that over the top. And your dinner's done. I'm going to show you what it looks like, and then I'm going to taste it. I mean, it's about 1,000 pounds. I might try to show it to you. Woo! I might need to bring the camera in here. Look at that. Uh-huh. We did that in less than 25 minutes. We also made something I believe impressive enough to entertain with. So I'm going to taste this and make myself a bowl. Or a plate. I'll do a plate. The bowls are a little higher up on the shelf. And if I do it just right, it will look like I was never even here. That is a skill. Trust me. When you are the one that's cooking everything, you want to know what it tastes like, number one, but sometimes you really want to eat it and you just don't want anybody to know. Okay, so let me get my fork. Oh, decadent and creamy. But I cannot say that this is my favorite without saying the bacon is my favorite part of my favorite. Let's be honest right here. Mm. Mm. You'll be so glad that you took that bacon out and let it stay crispy, because when you put it back in at this point, it really is a standout ingredient. If your kids don't like spinach, this might be the one to try them on, because honest to goodness, you don't even know it's in there. I'm going to put some links below for you to get some really good pans like this. I love my stainless pans. I also put the link down there for Mama Witten's Kitchen, and I have a new Shortcut Supper digital cookbook with lessons just like this that I've not released to the public, along with the grocery lists and the recipe cards and all my tips to do those lessons anytime you want to. So I'll put those links down there. And until next time, happy cooking, y'all. See you later.